Hello, everyone. It's nice to see a lot of friendly faces already in the attendees. Today, we are here to chat about school day. So how you can lower fees and get less paperwork by using and managing school-generated funds. So I'm going to have David move to the next slide for me. He's the master of the PowerPoint today. A little bit of housekeeping. Cameras are accessible to moderators and speakers only. While we're going through this webinar, feel free to use the chat or Q&A to put your questions in. We're going to answer them at the end in our Q&A session. We are going to mute ourselves when not speaking because I know I have a cat here in my background that likes to lead the show, so I'm going to mute so he's not our speaker. And we will send a recording of this webinar to you within the next week. So now to give you a very quick introduction to our three presenters, because we got to get this ball rolling. With us today, we have David, who is VP of Revenue, GM School Day, Paula, Customer Success Manager, and Wendy, our pre-sales consultant. And all three have an incredible background. I see at least combined over 60 years of experience with school districts. So that is insane. And if you want to get to know them more, ask in the Q&A because I'm sure they can give you a full background. So we'll slide over to the agenda so we can get moving. So I'm going to let David take over now to chat about school day.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Brianna, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We're very excited to present the program to you. And as Bri mentioned, we got a fair bit that we want to get to and make sure we leave enough time to answer some of your questions at the end. So just very quickly, what we're going to talk about today is initially the program itself, how we set it up and what the program does in terms of an overview of the services. Then I'll give you a demonstration how the revenue side works. So how the money comes into the system, how we track it, and how we move from item level details up to the reports that come out of that. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about our reconciliation best practices. As everybody knows who's close to collecting funds on a system like ours, if you can't reconcile, it makes things very, very difficult. So I'll talk a little bit about how we approach reconciliation within the system. I'll give you a little sense of how the reports work, the type of data that we can generate and how we can customize it depending on your particular situation. And then we'll do a preview of our school generated funds accounting. So really the expenses side to match the revenue that we're already collecting and show you how that comes together within the system. And then again, just leave you some time at the end to ask questions about the system. So without further ado, if I can get the slides working, there we go. So how do we get school day set up? Well, school day really sits in the middle of a number of systems that you may already have in use at your district. So we populate it with finance information and with student, school, and class information from your existing ERP or finance system, and then from your SIS, which ideally are the SparkRock and Assembly products, but we can work independently with the existing systems that you may have at your school district already. So we get the school and the finance data from those systems and we load it into school day. And this means that there's really no manual setup of any of the big building blocks of the system. We want to make sure also that we get these pieces of information from your existing systems to make sure that they match, that your users are going to be familiar with the way that the information is set up. And particularly with the finance data, we want to make sure that we're putting the exact same ledger codes into the system that you need to report on later. So we really can grab those codes, put them into the system, and then we start to work with the schools. So the schools will then get access to the system, and they'll create what we refer to as items on the school day system for people to take action against. Items are things like field trips, which we call events. You can create products or forms within the system. And those are created at the school level, again, using that data that we loaded in the first step. You can't create anything on school day that is not affiliated to a ledger code. And that piece is important when we get down to the reconciliation. The system is set up so that you can't have any unaffiliated cash or disbursements in the system that you then later have to associate to a ledger code. That all happens at the moment of creation. And again, that's to cut down on the errors, make sure that we're consistent, and that when we want to get to reconciliation reports, that our ledger codes are the correct ones. Now, after we've got these items set up, we need parents to come to the system, make purchases, provide consent, book appointments. It's really about the administration between the school and the parents at that point. The parents do sign up independently. We don't take parent information from your SIS. And this is to make sure that we're CASL compliant in terms of any of the communications that go out through school day. So the system allows a parent to turn off notifications, for example, and you know this way that they have specifically agreed to receive communications from you. So you know that those electronic communications are, again, all CASL compliant. Now, the last piece is the payment provider. We ourselves do not process the payments, and we don't hold on to any of the money. So we bring to the table, we have a number of different partners in this space that we can recommend. This also allows us to ensure that we get very good rates from the providers, because we can be agnostic and we can really talk to multiple providers to make sure that we can get you the best rate and that they have the level of services that are required for your district. We also do all of the reporting so that you don't have to go directly to the payment provider. And that's really the last piece of the puzzle that comes into school day. We sit in the center of all those pieces and make sure that they all are speaking to each other. So while the parent just goes up and signs in and makes a payment, and they may not even realize the third-party payment provider that's there, we do all the tracking in the background to make sure that we know when that payment was made, who made it, what ledger code it was associated to, what item it was associated to in terms of your item level detail, like the field trip. And then we can also track from the time that it happened right until it got into your bank. And I'll spend a little bit more on that when we talk about our best practices of reconciliation. Now, as I mentioned, the first part that the schools are going to do are post items. So items within the system we've built to match what we found to be the most commonly used processes at the school. So you'll see an event. This is very much like a field trip. It's an item that allows you to have a date associated, a cost associated, and then also attach permission forms specifically. You'll hear me use the term form a number of times. There are a number of forms within the system. A permission form specifically must be signed off before you can say check out and pay for that. It's a business control designed to ensure that we have digital informed consent, and we have a number of pieces within the system that ensure all of the correct information is presented to a parent specific to that parent and their student to again make sure that we're following the requirements for informed consent. And we also store those forms digitally on the system. We also have things, more like an e-commerce storefront. Those would be something that we might call products. The form that you're seeing here is a form that you can make ad hoc, and it's really a pretty powerful one in terms of the types of different things you can add to a form. This one that you're seeing here has been set up so that each different option you can put in a different price for it. So, this is as flexible to be used for something like hot lunches, where you may have a full month's worth of orders. And I'll show you what this looks like in the system in a few minutes. But you can set up one event that's for the whole month, one product for the whole month, have different options for each day, and have a different price for each option, all within the system. And then there's the associated reporting that you can pull out of that. You can see here that this one is half filled out. I just wanted to show that this form builder can be ad hoc. We also have the ability to pre-make these forms at the district or the school level if you want to standardize them. So if there's one type of pizza order form that you want all schools to use, we can institute that at the district level, and then that form would be standardized for everybody that uses it. I won't go into every different item here just based on the time, but I did want to highlight services and fees. Services is something that we typically use for donations within the school. It is an open-ended dollar amount. You at the school level tie it to an item, and you put in an account code and a minimum cost, but then the parent is able to enter how much money they want to put in while they're checking out. So again, it's a good way to raise funds for different items and make sure that all of those funds coming in are still tracked specifically to the correct ledger code. And then fees are something that are a little bit different. While the rest of these are set up a little bit like a store, they're optional. You may choose them. A fee is something that you can assign specifically to either a student, a class full of students, or even an entire school. And they also let an individual pay down the bulk amount over time. So we see this used quite often, for example, maybe the end of year trip that's a little bit more expensive than everything else, and you want to give parents the opportunity to pay as they can. Fee is something that allows you to do that, and then you can treat the amounts a little bit like accounts receivable. So you can see paid and unpaid amounts for any specific fee, and the system allows you to generate invoices and follow-ups for people that might not have paid at any given time. There are additional features within the system that we feel really help you take care of that administrative portion between yourselves and the parents. So you can see here an example of a permission form, what some of the options might look like if it's spread out for the parent. And you can see also the semester conference booking. So we have a complete appointment booker within the system. This is designed for something like parent-teacher interviews, but is really very flexible, and you can set it up for just about anything that you want. So at the school level, you just assign which teachers are going to be a part of it, how long their appointments might be, and then it's the parents go in and book themselves appointments so that they can set up that little diagonal line they need to see in sequence, but you at the office wouldn't have to try to sort through 10 different schedules to make sure that everybody gets what they want. It's part of the theme of what you'll see here. We're really trying to get the administration paperless, digital, and make it much, much easier for you at the school level to give you back some of your time. Now, we do have a shopping cart interface. This is one of those things that you don't want to reinvent the wheel, largely because it works and also because parents are familiar with this type of process. We have a very high parent adoption rate across all of our districts. We're currently sitting at about 91 or 92%. And that means that within a given district, 92% of the parents are signed up to use the product. And we believe a big part of that is just the usability and the familiarity. You're not going to have to do training for your parents. We have a huge knowledge base that helps them figure out anything that they need to do. But really, if they're even at all familiar with online purchases and online environments, it's quite likely they're going to get to this system and know what to do the first time that they get there. You'll also see on this screen, we have an electronic funds transfer option. This is something that we developed specifically with one of our partners to make sure that if you have parents that maybe don't have a credit card and you want to offer a bank-to-bank option, you can do that through our system. Now, once people start to make parents, it's obviously very important. They're probably making parents outside of our system, but once they start to make purchases on our system, it's very important that we track all of the different pieces of information to, again, make sure that we can reconcile at the end. You'll see within the payment history, and I will show you this on the system, but we have transaction and order IDs. This is to give us redundancy of tracking. The transaction comes from our payment provider, and that will tell us what was the dollar amount and was it approved at the time of purchase and when it got sent into the bank. Then we have our order ID. That's really the school day information. So what was the item they purchased, what was the parent, what was the student, and what was the ledger code that it was attached to. This batch isn't filled out here, but I'll show you that within the system. The batch is critical because these individual online orders do not get deposited into your bank one at a time. They'll get assembled over a 24-hour period and then deposited in bulk. So the batch internally allows us to track which individual orders are then bundled into a batch, because when we try to reconcile your bank account, it's the batch amount that you'll need to know to line up line for line, not the individual orders. We use the individual orders and the information in that order ID to then give you a double view where you can see exactly what got deposited in the bank as a dollar amount, but also the ledger tables that were affected by it, and also some at the item level. So if you need to see what I sold in my pizzas for the month of September, you can look at it that way. You could also look at the ledger code that those pizzas might be associated to, or if you need to just drill down and see how many pizzas Gabriel bought that month, you're also able to search through our text smart search box. So it's a pretty powerful tool. You can generate your own reports out of it. And it just indicates just exactly how much information we track in the background without users having to input this. This all happens automatically at the moment of purchase because of how we set up the items initially. Now, the money we never touch. So I think this is an important differentiation between how some products are set up. We like to make sure that those funds get deposited directly into your school bank account in as smooth and as quickly a method as possible. So this is typically 1 to 3 days after it's been earned. It just depends on which of these payment providers that you're using. But the funds, as I mentioned, are bundled together over a 24-hour period and then deposited directly into your account. So we have no access to them within school day, nor do we have access to any of the credit card information. And that goes for your school users as well. We think this is very important in terms of liability, in terms of PCI compliance, and really just safety. If there's no cards stored within our system or that you have any access to, the amount of risk is greatly reduced. And we find that a much, much safer way to deal with the card information. The PCI compliance that any of these major producers have to go through is significant. It's all very public, and you can just rest assured that way that the funds are traveling to your bank account safely and that there is no interruption, no ability where we might be holding on to them, let's say, and then, we decide to go on a lovely vacation to Hawaii. There just even is not the possibility within our system that could happen. You have complete visibility and ownership over the funds at all time. These are just obviously our big banks, but this works perfectly well with credit unions, and we have a number of districts that deposit into credit union accounts. It can end up in any account. It's entirely up to you at the district level. And then some of the payment options are just determined by the provider. So as I mentioned, we're agnostic, and what we really do is work with you during the setup to figure out what is the best fit for your district, what's the best way to make sure that we can save you funds in terms of the processing fees, and then even if you need additional services. So some people may want to include POS or alternative payment options, and these are all things that we can help you figure out during the setup fee. We work with our partners to make sure you have all the services needed, and then that all those funds are going to flow into your bank account and into the ledger tables that we have within the system. Okay, so if you'll just give me a minute here to change screens, just going to bring up the system itself. Okay, so here we are. This is the main login page for school day. Now, this is something that actually you can have a widget put directly on your website. We've worked with webmasters at a number of different districts to essentially just shrink it to this login box, and then you can embed it directly onto your school website so that they don't have to come to our website. It's usually our preferred way to do it. We think if you've got traffic already coming to your website, there's no reason to retrain your parents. And you'll also notice that we have a sign in with Microsoft. So for school users, they're able to sign in with their Microsoft account. Always love typing live on webinars. Hopefully I got it right the first time. Looks like I did. So this is our dashboard. Now the dashboard itself is dynamic. I'm signed in as a school day administrator here. That means I have access to everything within my school, and I have a top level view of all of the classes and all of the groups. If I was signed in as a teacher, I would only have specifically the classes that had been assigned to me in the SIS. And I should mention that the teacher part of it is entirely up to you as a district. If you don't want to include the teachers, you certainly don't have to. We load them as data points, but they do not have to be users if you don't want to use it that way within your district. The admin can act as any of the teachers, and they still can set up events or products directly to an individual class if they want to. What we quite often find is it'll start in the office with the admins. You'll get a few curious teachers that maybe want to use the system and will ask for access, and you can drive it out that way. But we always understand there's certain sensitivities in terms of unions and other things. So that's entirely up to you. There's no forced usage within the system, and it's enormously flexible depending on how exactly you want to match the existing business rules really within your district. Now, when we want to create a new item, which just before I'll do very quickly at a glance here, you can see that this is information so that the school admin has a good sense that the data syncing is working in the background. We sync nightly with the SIS. We can also sync nightly with the finance system to grab any updates to ledger codes. And this is just a quick way for an admin to be able to see, you know what, yeah, this looks right. But if you came in and you saw there was only one class and 5 teachers, then you know that there's something going on with the data. So it's just good at a glance information. If you need to drill down, you can drill down into any of the teachers or the groups. You are able to make separate groups directly within school day. Maybe you want to set up a team and your SIS doesn't allow for that very easily. You do have the ability as an admin to create a new grouping within school day and then add any supervisor that you want to it. And we do see that quite often with teams. Maybe you'll create a group that has everybody who tried out for the team. They'll give the coach access. They'll cut the people that didn't sadly make the team this year. And then they can use that grouping to set up practices. Maybe there's a tournament and there's a fee associated that they need to send out to the parents. So again, it's very, very flexible. And everything that you would see here would be as it's written within your SIS. So we're really trying to get familiarity, and we really want it so that when the users get here the first time, they're already very familiar with everything that they see. Now, if I want to create an item with school day, we'll just go to my handy plus item. This is all those items that you saw on that slide. Again, we don't have a ton of time, so just very, very quickly, an announcement is exactly what you probably think it is. This is a text that goes out to all of the users. When I say text, I mean it's just a text-only update. There's nothing for them to do. It's not actually SMS. It is an email, but this can go out either from an individual class to just those students. It can go out from an admin to the whole school, and it can even go out from the board to all users. So it's, again, a flexible, easy way to get information out to your constituents without having to send it all out in paper. We discussed the fee and the product, and now I just want to show you a little bit about how an event comes together. This will give you a sense of those data pieces at the start and how they're useful to this portion of it. So you can see I'm an admin again, so I have the choice. I can add it to any individual school or the school at, or sorry, any individual class or the school at large. If I know which one I'm looking for, I can do searching through here and the results will shrink based on what I type in. So it's a very quick way to sort through all of the information. And again, we're grabbing all of this from the SIS. Let's just pick one for now. A view-only event is something I mentioned that you might want to set up practices, but there's no specific action to take. A view-only event is something that you want to put in people's calendars, but you don't need them to take action on. So you can see some of our choices change down here. It has a start date. I can make it repeatable. I have a choice for how often I want to repeat it. But we're going to look at the larger event. You can see again, my options changed. Now this form we tend to refer to as an item. We know within the marketplace, some people would consider this, what we're looking at here, a web form. The fields themselves are set here, but this you can just create ad hoc. So you don't need to contact us if you need to add new events. This is all done directly through the school. And these items that are highlighted are associated to wildcards for our permission forms. So I'll just very quickly show you how that looks before I go further here. When we talk about a permission form, we work with you at the district level to get the forms that must be signed as waivers before somebody is allowed to engage in an activity. So in this case, this is a standard one, an ISO F14. All of the legal language is taken directly from the board. And then you can see that we have a number of wildcards in here. These wildcards grab the information from the event item form so that when a parent looks at it, they are seeing specific information to them. So they're seeing their name, their student's name, they're seeing the specific school board or class that it was associated to, and other information that again was all on our event form. So everything that is highlighted as a star is to make sure that when a parent looks at a completed form, that they are actually providing informed consent because they've been given all of the very specific details that they need to. There's a number of things in here that are really based off of feedback. It's been an iterative system. We've been in the market since 2010, and we really do like to listen to our customers and add in new things that we think make it easier for them. So in this case, you'll see send a reminder to the event supervisor 3 days before the start date. We found that a lot of people like to set things up all at the start of the year, but then you set it up in September and it's going to happen in March. And maybe you want a reminder a few days beforehand to go and make sure everyone's filled out their forms and they've made their payments. So this is a way to send yourself a little reminder, 3 days, maybe it's going to be 10 days, whatever it might be. This is an administrative tool, so we really want to make it functional and useful for the people using it. An event must have a start date. It doesn't need to have an end date because quite often they're just one day. And the same thing with the time. We can input in times for start and end if we need to. We try to use drop downs wherever we can to make sure that the data is good. If we leave it to human error, we're all fallible. There ends up being some funky things into the fields. So wherever we can restrict and use drop downs and base it on existing data, we try to do that for both speed and for accuracy. Now, I'm just going to spend a little bit of time here with the actual cost and the display price because this comes up when we start to talk about reconciliation. So for anybody who's familiar with online payments, there are fees associated. It's impossible to get around it. Credit cards, Interact, whatever it might be, they have a fee for using them. We understand, though, at the school level, this may not be a level of delicacy in terms of how they think about these costs and how they might want to use them. So we've put in a tool that allows for an uplift on the price. This is a completely optional tool. You don't have to use it. It can also be different at different schools if you'd like to set it to that level of variance. And what it allows you to do is train your users. Do you want to figure out how much money you actually need to receive or what you want to post to the parent? The display price is the only thing that ever gets shown to the purchaser. So let's say, I need to recover $10 because that's my cost for this event. So I want to make sure I get my $10. Then it'll say you should up that display price to $10.30. And in this case, I don't want to put it at $10.30 because it's going to be a confusing dollar amount for everybody. So let's just change that to 11. And then the system will tell you, then this is what you should expect to receive as revenue. Now, this is important because we track the difference between these, and then we provide you journal entries as part of the reconciliation to make sure that you put that money aside and you put it into a fee account so that when the actual bill comes due, you've got that money put aside already. And this saves you, at the end of the month or the end of the year, trying to figure out what you're supposed to pull from each of your revenue categories to cover off the costs of the transactions. It's all baked into the system and it's set up so that really once you've put this dollar number in, you don't really have to do anything else in terms of the tracking. We do all of that in the background. We separate it into the account, and then we can help you with either an automatic upload into a finance system, or when I show you the school generated funds accounting side of it, there's ways to reconcile this directly within our system. I also mentioned that everything must be associated to a payment category. So when I choose this drop down of account codes would have come from the finance system. I'll also mention that we have the ability to do something called approvals within the system. We understand sometimes the coach or the teacher that might be setting up an event, maybe they don't know which code to use. So if we set our school up to approval, one user can set up everything within the event, but maybe they leave this field blank. They send it to approval down to the office, and then the office could add the code in. Again, this is critical for the reconciliation part because we want to make sure we can show you not just what you earned for an individual item, but also what the balance is to the ledger within a certain time period and match that to the dollars that actually made it to the bank account. So it is simply not possible to create an item within school day that is not tied to a ledger code. And that's exactly the same rules we use on the expense tracking side. You can't just write a check. It must be a check that's against an invoice, and the invoice has a ledger code attached to it so that we're always tracking exactly where the money is going. Deadline for payment, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. If the event's on Friday, but you need the money in by Monday, it allows you to set both of those dates independently. And then you can send in a reminder again if it's before the deadline for the payment. Now, the forms that I just showed you before, the permission form and all that sort of complicated legal language and all those wild cards, that's really just set up once. And we typically do it at the start of the year. For the user that's creating the item, all they have to do is grab one from the dropdown, and it's as simple as that. Now, these forms have a number of business rules around them. If you want to, again, create them at the district level and restrict other people adding them, you can do that. You're also able as an admin to create them ad hoc. We probably won't have time to dig into the creation of them, but they're pretty simple. You really just copy the language in, you put in whatever wildcards you need, you can preview it through the system, and away you go. And anything that's approved gets added to this dropdown. And if we need to add multiple forms for an individual one, we certainly can. And again, that's all that this user has to do. Every parent that now sees this will see it specific to their child and their account. There's a few other items in here. You can track volunteers directly through the system. If you want volunteers to come to this event, fill in a little bit of description. And then I mentioned the standard forms. So if we had made a number of standard forms at the board and we wanted to use those instead of the other forms, you can grab these from the list. And this also allows you to create two different permission types. So the permission form must be signed before somebody can go on the trip, but maybe there's optional information. So maybe with our volunteers, we said, if you can drive, please let us know. And if you are going to do that, make sure that you fill out the volunteer driver form. So we're going to add that, and then we have everything completely connected to the same event. Save and notify are just slightly different ways of getting it onto the system. If I save it, it will post it, but people will not get alerted specifically. If I save and notify, everybody that has an account associated to the grouping that I selected up here will get an email about that particular event. Now, in this case, I'm not actually going to save it because we have a few that are already created and that have some entries taken to them. So I'll show you a little bit what it might look like once we've actually got some entries come in. You can tell we're thinking about summer already because we've got our canoe trip here. In this case, this is the quick summary for the user. We can see who's invited. In this case, all students in school day are invited. As I mentioned before, if you wanted to narrow it down to other people, you can choose just a few people from different classes. You could mix and match however you want. And if you, for whatever reason, needed to drill this down to just one user, you could do that too. You can see it remembers everything that I've selected on the previous screen. This would set up this event then just for those 3 students. So it's a pretty powerful tool in terms of narrowing down the focus if you need to create groups that are not part of the CIS groupings that we loaded at the first place. We get a little bit of summary information here in terms of how this trip was set up. What the school was, the whens, the where, the associated products, the forms that were added. And in this case, the event form also had some optional things that the parents could fill in. Now you'll see this little ... menu up here. It's essentially our more menu item. This is a contextual menu and it's specific to whatever page you're on. So in this case, we're looking at an event. These are all specific to what you might want to do with an event. We won't go through all of them again just on the time, but you can see some of the things that I mentioned. If I need to see my volunteer list, this also allows you to approve or deny anybody that volunteered to be a volunteer. The payment history will take us to our payment history screen, but will only contain the items that are relevant to this event. So it's just a quick way to sort it. I do want to show you the attendance list, though, just to give you an idea, again, of some of the niche capability we've created based on the feedback that we get. So this might be something that maybe is happening the day of, and somebody wants a list because the bus is here and they need to know everybody that paid and everybody that didn't. So we can see who's participating, who hasn't filled out their forms. In this case, it looks like we didn't get very good feedback on it because we got a lot of people not responded. And then some very quick financial information that we need. This, again, you'll see this throughout the system. These can all sort through your information as you need to. You have the ability to filter by class, and we have our handy dandy text filtering again. So maybe we just want to see all the Jennifers, and you can very quickly go and see specifically what you've typed in. And then we can also see which forms they've signed. And if we really need to drill down, I'm not going to save it in this case, but you can actually do a download of the PDF in case maybe you needed to provide these to the museum when you got there. So it's a very, very powerful tool, really helps you cut down on the amount of paper that's going back and forth. It ensures that the proper processes are still followed for all of these things with informed consent, and then with the storage as well. So we want to make sure it's a complete system. So not only setting it up, but also when you have to store these pieces of information. So for all of the permission forms that are signed through the system, we keep an archive. The default is current year +1. You can tell this is our demo school because we go back a fair ways. But then you can just grab an event, and this will show you everybody that signed that form for that event. This is something we usually run at the end of the year as well to say we should pull the entire year's list so that you have a backup. And then if I wanted to look at one of these forms, I can export it. Again, I'm not going to pull it up necessarily right now, just for a timing, but you have the ability to look at all of these as a complete PDF. It shows the parent's name, everything that they read and signed, and you have a complete digital archive of all of the forms. So if even a year later you need to prove that Rachel had a form signed by Ellen at this specific time, you have a complete record of everything within the system. I'm just going to very quickly sign out and show you what this might look like from a parent's side. There we go. And I'm just going to highlight our responsive website. So typing and chewing gum at the same time. This is the parent side. Oh, you can see I didn't do it very well there. Now this site is more responsive, so the screen will shrink depending on the type of device that they're using. It's not in the App Store. That really just has to do with business models more than anything else, but it is responsive. So parents can have it loaded onto their smartphone, which is really what it's built to do. I'm just going to sign in, trying to remember all my passwords off the top of my head. So you can see, again, we have a dashboard with some similarity. You can see this canoe trip that we were just looking at on the admin side. The difference is it's a little bit more modern design and responsive. So if I did have this on the phone and I needed to shrink my screen, for example, this menu would go off to the side and then you just see a straight list. And it's really just designed to make sure that whatever the device the person is using is responsive. We'll take a quick look at the canoe trip here, and you can see as a parent, I can have multiple students attached to my account, and I can deal with them all independently. In this case, I've said Rachel is not attending, and Annabelle's not attending, but you know what? They've changed their mind, and you can see the different forms go through. Now, you'll also notice that I can't pay for this yet. It's because I haven't filled out the forms. There's a permission form attached to this event, so the system will not let me check out until I go through it. And then you can see the form as the parent would see it now. So here is all that legal language again, but in this case, it's been filled out with the date and the time, the specific trip it was associated to, the parents, the name of the parent, and you get a chance to see all of that information together. And again, this will be saved as a standalone PDF for you so that you have the complete record of it. I'm just looking at the time, and there's still a few things to get through, so I'm not going to spend too much more time on the parent side. Again, we have very, very high parent adoption. We handle complete technical support for the parents, and the system has been very, very usable, and it's made to be that way. Just quickly on the fees, you can see this is one where it's pretty expensive, but if I just want to pay a smaller amount, I can. Once I've paid and checked out, my amount owing is going to go down, and this amount here would be reduced as well. So I'm going to just jump back into the presentation. So that's a very quick view of the, you know what, I should show you just one more thing. Sorry there. You can tell I've got about 45 windows open as I'm trying to do this. I do just very quickly want to show you the products forms as well. As you can see, this one is set up so that there is a lot of different choices. This is set up for an entire month, but you can see as the parent, it's very easy to go through, click and choose exactly what I want on any given day. So it's a pretty powerful ordering system, change the quantity if I need to, and then I can add it to my cart and away we go. So it's a pretty good, very usable system, and it's very flexible. You can make this pretty much as complicated or as easy as you want. After we released this one, actually, we had a few schools saying, you know what, I don't think I want to offer quite as many options as you actually have it set up to do, because then maybe it's a little bit complicated to deal with all of the orders that come in. But I'm going to just jump back very quickly to the PowerPoint, because I want to show a little bit about how we deal with the reconciliation side of things, and then get to the preview of the school generated funds. So reconciliation, in this case, when we're talking about the reconciliation, it's really making sure that we can explain everything that got into your bank account, what that was comprised of, when it got there, and what ledger tables are also associated to that. So just a very quick highlight of the terminology. You've heard me say batch a few times. A batch is really equivalent to a bank deposit, let's say. If you received 10 orders in cash, you wouldn't deposit them $5 at a time. You would deposit it all together as one bulk order. That's really what a batch is as it refers to online payments. So over a 24-hour period, there would be a number of payments from the parents. Those will get assembled into a batch, and then it's the batch that will get deposited into your bank account. And we track independently all of these different things. So the order on its own, and then also the orders as they're bundled into the batch, to make sure that we can accurately report to you, this is exactly what got into your bank, and this is everything that it's comprised of. Now, when we talk about what actually got to the bank, that's the settlement. So the settlement may be slightly different than the initial batch. Let's say that with your particular payment provider, they withdraw the fees before it's deposited. That will mean your settlement dollar total is slightly different than what your expected total batch was. And we also track those differences. So we can show you exactly what happened with every dollar on its path through the system before it got to your bank account. The goal being, when you get to the end, it's very easy to explain all of the charges that are within your system. So just as a best practice is very quickly laid out, we first load those codes from your finance system. Then you're going to create items on the system. The parents are going to pay for those items, which really does the receipting automatically. As soon as they've purchased it, we know the who, the when, what it was for, and which ledger code it was attached to. And then internally, the parent's going to get an order that stays within the system. I didn't quite have a chance to show you that on the parent side, but they have a complete listing of every order that they have made through school day that they can go back and pull up at any time. Within school day, we do two things in the back end. We assign those orders to the batch, and then we also make the ledger entry for all of the dollars that were earned. And then the final piece is really doing a reconciliation report. So we need to show you exactly what got into the bank, what the dollar amount was, if fees were extracted, what were those fees, and then what is the ledger total that reflects that. So it's really these three pieces that we have to make sure we can look at, excuse me, independently, and then report on either independently or in combination. So we can always show you your gross sales through school day. Then we can also show you this is what we actually expect will be net revenue at the end after we take out what is the expected transaction fee. Now, there's a few different ways to do this. When I show you the school generated funds part, you can match it individually yourself. This is a deposit. This is what I saw in school day, and then back out the fees. Or we also have ways that we can automate this style of reporting. So there's obviously a lot of information on this screen. I'm just going to highlight really what the blocks are. This is just to show you how we put these different pieces of information together. So this is exactly what you would expect to see on your bank statement. And anybody that's been either transacting with us or maybe has seen deposits come in is probably familiar with line items like this. It'll be something from your provider, the date that it's associated to, and then a dollar amount. And what we do is make sure we can tell you this is the expected dollar amount, this is the day you should expect it in the bank, and this is the day you actually earned it on school day. Batches get deposited, as I mentioned, sometimes it's a 1 or 2 delay. They don't get deposited on weekends or holidays. So often the batch day is different than the settlement day. And this is to make sure that we can track that, because the money you earned the last day of the month is not going to get into the bank within that month. So we need to be able to separate these items out so that we can reconcile again to what specifically you got into your bank account. This helps you determine then the fee part of it. So on the, whoops, go backwards. You might have had a gross sales of $35 for that day, but only 34 got into the bank. So then we can backtrack and see, well, these are the exact fees that you paid. And then again, as I mentioned, we provide you with the journal entries. So we say, despite the gross amount that you earned into field trips, this is the amount that you should actually put into as revenue. This goes again back to that calculator where we're putting aside a certain amount for the fees, and then we can track all of those pieces of information as well. So this is the amount that you collected by doing that slight uplift. This is what you actually got charged once the bill came in, and then there may be additional, let's say, monthly fees. So what we suggest is that there's a fee account, and that we journal entry into the fee account so that it's got a balance in it. And then when we have bills to pay associated with those fees, instead of trying to go back to these individual ledgers at the end of the month or the end of the year and do this very difficult adjustment when it's thousands of entries, we do it on a monthly basis or even on a daily basis, depending on how exactly you want to be set up, so that you never have to have that very long, difficult process of trying to back out what the expected fees were against your revenue. It's all set up for that one full through line. So you have it set within the system how much you're going to put aside. We do that for you, and then we give you all of the journal entries. This can either be automatically uploaded into a system. It can be separated out into multiple reports. For example, if you need your principal to sign off, we can produce this report that has a signature line at the bottom so that you have it for your records. Again, it's very flexible to match whatever the business processes you have at your school. And we really try to use it on all of the school generated funds rules that are set out by the ministry. And I should mention, for all of our out of province folks joining us today, we are prepared to change this to depending on the province. It's something that we're already doing in the back end. So this is set up right now to look like an Ontario version of it, but we can quite easily change this to be special funds. Let's say if we're going to go into a BC environment, we map it depending on exactly what your business requirement is. So this is not forced on you by any means. The idea is to match what it is that you currently have as a business practice. Now, when we talk about school-generated funds accounting, which is the last part of the presentation here, and I've got a few minutes still, so I'll give you a very quick overview and then let you see what it looks like. But this is really the expense tracking to match all of the revenue tracking that I just demonstrated, and it's built on a very similar rule set. So you must have ledger codes associated. We also have the ability to run the complete ledger set, so you don't have to just use your revenue codes for this and then try to figure out at the end of the year, well, which part of this revenue was expense. We have the ability to put expense codes actually in there directly as they come down from the ministry, so that if you're creating a check, let's say within the system, you can tag it to an expense account as opposed to tagging it to the revenue account. We also have check printing, vendor and invoice management built into it, and there's the associated rules. So you can't write a check to just nothing. A check must be written against an invoice, and an invoice must be attached to an approved vendor. And you can either create these vendors at the school level, or if you have a list of them at the district level, we can upload them, let's say, at the start of the year. And then we look to do year-end reporting out of it. So again, the version you'll see right now is based on an Ontario setup, but we've already taken into consideration that we would need to change these regionally for different tax codes and the specific ministry requirements within your province. Now, in terms of the why, again, we're running a little short on time, so I won't go too deeply into this. But we've heard a lot of feedback from the market that they like how we're doing the revenue, and they'd really like to see us take a crack at the expense without naming too many of our competitors. We sometimes hear some frustration with, let's say, outdated systems or the way that they gather this information and the amount of manual work that is still required. So we've really tried to set this up so that it has the same spirit that we've had on the revenue, that it's done based on your existing information, it's matched to your business processes, and that we're trying to let computers do the calculating as much as possible so that we don't introduce human error. And again, we can save you a lot of time and effort and money. Okay, so I'm just going to switch over to my other screen here. One of the 24 currently going. And here we are. So I've saved myself the time of watching me log in this time. You'll notice that don't worry about the data set. I keep using the same data set over and over and over again to save our developers from reproducing this. But it's all false transactions, which are a bit tricky for us to make. So we tend to use the same data set. So don't worry about that side of it. You can see here a few of the features that we've been discussing. We have checks, complete tracking of them. We also check independently when those checks are printed and what user approved them. Apologies for the lack of creativity in our usernames. This is the Green School, and the Green School principal was the one that approved them. Now, if I need to create a check, again, you're going to see that the first thing it asks me for is an invoice. I cannot just go and start to create this check if there is nothing to pay for. And the system also has a smart filter into it. So I'll show you the invoices. This is the only one that's unpaid. If I had 10 unpaid, they'd all come up, but this is the only one in particular that's there. If I want to create a check, you'll see that it now is defaulted all of the information from that invoice. So I have the total of the amount, the vendor who was in there, and the HST applicable amount. Again, this changes depending on the region. And in some cases, we're actually moving the HST tracking over to the vendors. So you can say, you know, this vendor is this style of tax applicable so that it would default onto the same amounts. And that can be either a dollar amount, or for example, if there's particular codes that you might use, maybe it's 25% of 50%. This is to make sure that you have tax tracking when you go to do the refund. So all of this is configured. We just use algebra here, but this is configured based on your district and your region. You also don't have to use it. If it's easier for your users just to have a yes, no toggle, and if they say yes, then you'll see this little button will now be mandatory. So there's a few different ways to track it. Again, we're trying to make it flexible within the units to make sure we can map it to your business processes. Now, if I save this, this is actually, oh, see, I didn't put in enough information for it. So it's going to give me a little prompt there. We're going to call this a test again. I'm not being terribly creative. And now we have that check that's been applied to that invoice. So if I go back and see my checks, you can see that it's pending. I am signed in as a principal. We are again set up with multiple permission levels here. So if your admins want to create the checks, but we know that the ministry rules, let's say, will not allow the principal, or sorry, the admin to sign off on it, you can put in this approval step so that there's another user that basically will have to go in, review, and then approve it. And these are, again, customizable business rules that we can set up to make sure that it matches to your region. Now, I want to show you a few of the things that I tend to like best in here. So I'm going to show you quickly the month end and how we've conceived of this. Now, in this case, you'll see at the start, there's nothing in here. I have a number of school day entries, and these are, again, the batch totals. Checks are seen individually because that's how they're going to come out of your bank. But the totals for the revenue are grouped, and in this case, they're grouped by credit card. Depending on which provider you use, some of them bundle them together with all credit cards, some of them keep them separately. So again, we can change this depending on how we have it set up for your district. In this case, I'm going to load my bank data. Give me 1 second here. This is not the right folder. I thought I had this set up to go to the right one, but I didn't apparently. There we are with our Green Elementary School. Now I'm going to load my bank statement. Now there's a few different ways you can do this with the bank statement. You may not want in school day to load your full bank statement because maybe you only want to reconcile the school day items. So you can edit either the bank statement that goes in, or you can use this to then put items either in suspense or eliminate them. But you can see very quickly this has now brought in the dollar amounts that I would see in the bank to match against my school day. These are quick filters. Don't get frightened by the American Express. Some of you might be familiar that they have pretty high rates. You don't have to use American Express. They're just in here for an example. Now, all you have to do as a user is pick the two amounts that match. We click match, and this will put them now onto our ledger tables for that month. We're also working with some really exciting parts of AI where this can start to be automated through the AI machine. This is set up initially just as a manual, but again, it's pretty simple. It's kind of fun. You can just go through and match them. And it's got some business logic in here. So if I try to match it to something that doesn't match, you can see it's not going to give me the ability to match it anymore. If I match something incorrectly, I can go back and see and change and edit it. And then as I start to fill these out and say that they're matched, you can see my trial balance for the period will start to populate now. So what I'm really telling the system is I'm confirming that these dollars are reflected. I've received them in the bank. And then automatically the system will tell you, well, these are the ledger tables that those are associated to. We have a few other little features in here in terms of the data matching. It really walks the user along. I still have a bunch to do here because, you know, I haven't closed all of this activity. It's pulling this information from the bank statement that you would have loaded. And then we have some rules depending on how much you want to do. So in this case, we've conceived maybe you want to load the whole bank statement and you want to create things in school day to offset what you might have seen on the bank statement. So let's imagine for a minute this was just a fee and you were like, you know what, this is an NSF fee. It was sort of associated to school day activity, but there's no entry in school day so that my trial balance will line up. This allows you to very quickly create the entry in school day to match what we saw on our bank side. So let's say it was a fee. Again, I'm going to have to select an account code from my pre-existing dropdowns. give it a little bit of a description, and save it. So it's just a very quick way. If you did want to reconcile every single thing that happened in the bank to make sure there's a corresponding entry in school day, you can. And as I mentioned, if you don't want to go down that road, you can either just load a bank statement that only has the applicable, or you can do things like move things to suspense. So if we have exceptions and we don't want to put them through, all you have to do really is click on this little box. And what that will do is keep it in the suspense account, and it will remove it from the requirement to data match. So there's a lot of different tools in here. I know I'm going through it fairly quickly. The idea is the number of tools are here to make sure that we can match to your current business requirements and get all of the information out without maybe having to do, really complicated account training with the end user. Now, one more thing I do want to show just before we wrap up and leave some time for questions is how all this comes together to something like a year end. So again, apologies for the Ontario bias, but you're going to see what looks like an Ontario version of this. This is where we really want to get you. Everything now that has gone into the system, we want to have reflected very quickly into a report like this that allows you to see it throughout the year, and then also pull a report directly out of it that you can upload into EFIS. So in this case, we've obviously mocked up a lot of this, but you can see you have the ability to filter and choose exactly what you want to see. Maybe I just want to see this particular ministry category. In this case, I'm just going to go with elementary schools. The locations, you can search for individual ones. If you leave it blank, you're going to get everything. And then you can choose the individual categories if you'd loaded them underneath the ministry categories. As soon as we've got our selections, we just hit load, and then we have all of the information at a very quick glance so that we know exactly what happened at any given time. And if we just want to look at revenue or just want to look at expenditures, we're able to see any one of those. Okay,
Hey,
I got a hands up. Yes.
That's me. It looks like it didn't pop up on the screen for me.
That's one of the things you got to make sure with sharing the screens, isn't it? I didn't have the right window, so just give me 1 second. There we go. Now you can hopefully see it.
It looked like you were doing something awesome, but
I did. I was really excited
now
about
we can see it.
I was really excited about it, Bree. So thank you for pointing that out. So again, here we have all your revenue categories, your expenditures, and you can now imagine I was doing this on the last screen, but we can sort through if we just want revenue, if we just want expenditures, we can choose individual categories, or we can see all of them. We can limit it to secondary schools or elementary schools, individual locations if we want to search for them. If you leave it blank, you're going to get everything. And again, umbrella categories as they've been added. We map all of this during the setup so that you can then just very quickly pull reports and see exactly what's happening at any of your schools across any of your categories. Make sure that we're all lined up, make necessary adjustments, and then ideally pull this directly into your EFIS output. So I'm going to stop there. That was pretty breakneck speed, and just leave a few minutes for questions. Bree, just give me a second here, and I will bring back up the presentation for you.
We've got tons of questions. I think you did tackle some of these, but I'm going to have Paul and Wendy also help me go through these, because I see Carmine and Victoria. Tons of people have amazing questions. So I guess, Paula, do you want to help me start tackling some of these? Like there's integration options and data residency. Could you review some of those?
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe I'll start at the very top of the list if you want, Bree, if you guys want to start at the bottom and come in. So I see one of the first questions is integrations. So all of these systems can stand alone independently. I think I actually zipped right past that question. Listen, we've been working for many years before we actually got connected into the SparkRock infrastructure here. So we've worked with dozens of different SIS systems. The amount of information we take from the SIS is just administrative in nature. We're talking first name, last name, classroom. So it's really easy for us to set up these types of data feeds. We have done them with PowerSchool before, Trillium even way back in the day. We even set it up with one district for a completely home-built SIS. So we can use a lot of different setups, and we're very experienced at data processes back and forth. And I can see there's a follow-up to that. It's not a direct plugin, and this is partly because of the limited amount of data. If you wanted us to work on that with PowerSchool, we probably could, but the truth is that the nightly exports of the data files tends to be just as simple and clean. We have scripts we can help you use, and it's very, very affordable, which is always a concern of ours, as opposed to trying to get you to pay, let's say, for an additional integration with one of those companies. We provide you a very affordable and easy way to do it, and the data is all within Canada. Nothing goes outside of the country. I can just keep going through them here, Bree, if you want.
Yes, keep going. And I see
Okay.
Wendy is also answering some comments as well.
Okay.
So keep going.
Okay, let's see how fast we can do. Well, we do not share any information. We have no data model in terms of our processes, so we don't sell any of the parent data. We don't sell any of the transactional data. And again, we take as little as possible. So we really try to limit the amount of personal information in there, and anything that is in there has been freely volunteered for the parents. PCI has changed so that they don't even have to give us their address. All we really need is a first name and a last name and an email address. And then we do not resell that to anybody. What is the data retention? We do, in terms of transactions, we do 7 years. We like to keep information in terms of the items within the school. We usually encourage you to clean those out year after year, or at least archive them. You can imagine it's a database, right? So if you're trying to look at 7 years of information all together, it gets a little bit clunky. We have established year-end processes where we give you recommendations. You should get rid of these things. You should keep these things. And then processes so that if you want to, let's say, keep all of your permission forms in a condensed file that you can store somewhere else outside of our system, we have ways to help you with all of that as well too. Accounts and permissions, really it's a fairly simple structure within it. So we don't have, let's say, the really finite ability that you might find in something like AD Azure, where you can say this teacher has read a view of only this particular item. What we do have is structures matched to the SIS. So if you only want a teacher to have access to one particular class, we can use that structure. And we also have the ability to override that within the system. But it's really limited to sort of teachers, admins, and then we also have a district level in terms of the admins. Again, we're trying to make it sort of as easy as possible to maintain. So we try to get away from the individual setup of user roles. However, I will say we've worked with districts in the past where they just give us a download from AD and say, these are equivalent to teachers, these are equivalent to admins. Can you set it up in that fashion? And we're certainly able to accommodate that. We do have sign in with Microsoft. So anybody with a Microsoft account can sign in and use their Microsoft account. From a PCI compliance. Yeah, so the transactions are actually just on the parent side, right? These are not user transactions per se, the SparkRock themselves users. The transactions that come into the system are from parents from outside of the system. So I hope I'm understanding that question correctly. The inventory management, we have a few different ways that you can do that. The one thing that we don't have necessarily is absolute inventory controls. So if you're selling t-shirts and you got 20 red ones and 20 green ones and 20 blue ones, it's not set up exactly to do that. We have business practices that we can help you through, and Paula and her team are fantastic at this. We have use cases across many districts and many different scenarios, and it's quite likely we can find a way to use it. People have been using the purchasing part of the system for over a decade. And while one day we might like to do that, quantity controls are a very complicated part to put into the system. It's basically warehousing. And so, it's just one of those things that maybe, but for right now, we have other business practices that we can help you use to make sure that there are ways you control the inventory within the system. We do have quantity boxes for anything that you're purchasing. The one difference is an event. You can't buy an event twice. That's a business control, obviously, because your student's only going to go on that trip once. But within products, if you want to buy 10 slices of pizza, you certainly can. Our cost structure is a per student base. And the transaction rates, that's where we work with our providers to find a really good one. We know we have industry best rates and we'll probably can beat what it is that you're using now. We tend to set that on a district to district level based on what you need. So if POS is important for you, we might set you up with one kind of provider. Maybe EFT is really important for you, so we'll set you up with another one. And then the fees and the way that it works is associated. Our cost for the system itself is on a per student rate. You certainly can collect information. Actually, one of our examples, this is the question about putting a name on a jacket. One of the demos we had set up that I didn't quite get to is if you wanted to get a memorial t-shirt from that canoe trip, there's a box that drops down if you choose to buy the shirt to say what name do you want to put on it. So the options and the form builder that you can attach to the product is very, very powerful. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do it. Apple Pay is really down to the provider. If you're connected to one of our providers and they offer Apple Pay, we can. It really comes down to ensuring any payment type that we use, we can grab the appropriate data in the back end to make sure that we can reconcile properly for you. I will tell you on the market, some that offer you a front end payment are very poor on the back end, which means it's a nightmare for your finance department at the end. So we try to limit our partnerships to payment types that allow us to grab this information in bulk in the back end and make sure we can reconcile for you. How many more do we have here, Brie? Are there any others, Paula, that you would highlight
There-
as a main one? Because we are very close to the time here.
Yeah. How does it compare to Kev?
So
That
I
was a
think that,
question that came in.
so that's a tough one to answer very, very quickly. I will tell you that one, we're really focused on the Canadian market, and we continue to put development into it to make sure that we can make all of the parts of what you need within Canada part of our system. It's a much more modern system in terms of the KEV. We don't really have any of the legacy issues, I would say. This system has been built on web language from the start. So the ability, it's sometimes called an orchestration system, but the ability to grab information from outside pieces, put it all into our system and give you one complete report on the back is something that I think is differentiates us, and as well as just how friendly it is on the parent side of it with the appointment bookers and the mobile friendly version. I could go on and on. I'm obviously a little bit biased on that, but I think we have a very compelling case in terms of what we stack up to KEV back and forth.
So I did make a note, and I'm going to say it here too. For any questions we haven't had time to answer, keep throwing them in the chat or the Q&A up until we turn this webinar off. We are going to compile a whole Q&A document. I'm going to pick the brains of everyone on this call, and we will answer your questions. And in the meantime, I'll get David to go to the very last slide. Once this webinar is over, you might have even more questions, or maybe you want a demo. Please reach out to connect@sparkrock.com. And if you are already a customer with us, reach out to your CSM. If you don't remember who your CSM is, bug me at connect@sparkrock.com and I will find them for you. So thank you to everyone. And I'll let David, Paul, and Wendy close us out.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for attending. I'll just echo Bree's words there. Please do contact us if you're interested in more. You can see the system is pretty broad, and we think it's a very capable system. So please do contact us, and we'd love to show you more details about it. Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you
joining.
very much for your time today, everyone.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye.